Before we begin, this story involves the deaths of children and descriptions of slow asphyxiation in an underground mine. If you need to step away, please do. Take care of yourself first. This episode's narration is AI-generated. The research, writing, and editorial decisions behind every story are made with care for accuracy and respect for those involved. Negative 3-second break. Production inserts before cold open. December 6, 1907. Fathers arrived at Mu Non Gu's coal mine with their sons, boys too young to be in company records, too useful to leave behind. At 10:28 that morning, the mine exploded. 362 men were counted dead. The boys weren't counted at all. You're listening to The Unlit Room. Every story in here actually happened. That's the part that should scare you. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Today, December 6, 1907, a coal mine in West Virginia, the worst industrial disaster in American history, and a death toll that was wrong from the moment they wrote it down. Non Gu, West Virginia was a company town in Marion County, owned, operated, and controlled in 1907 by the Fairmont Coal Company. The miners lived in company houses and went underground each morning because there was nothing else to do and no one else to work for. Mine number 6 and mine number 8 had separate entrances cut into the same hillside. Number 6 entered on a slope. Number 8 dropped straight down. Underground, they weren't separate at all. A ventilation tunnel ran between them, designed to move fresh air through both shafts without the expense of running two independent systems. It kept costs down. On the morning of December 6th, more than 400 men and boys descended into the earth. The morning shift had been underground for a few hours when it happened. At 10:28, mine number 6 erupted. The blast came without warning, no alarm, no slow build-up. One moment the mine was working, the next, a wall of force tore through the tunnels, blowing timber supports into splinters, collapsing roof sections, hurling loaded coal cars off their rails. The explosion vented upward through the slope entrance. A geyser of coal dust, splintered wood, and debris shot from the mine mouth. Windows rattled in the company houses half a mile away. Residents in the streets thought the ground was shaking. An earthquake, maybe. Some ran toward it. They were wrong about the earthquake, and they were wrong to think it was over. Seconds after the first blast, mine number 8 exploded, hundreds of yards away. A completely separate entrance, a separate set of tunnels, and yet the same catastrophe, arriving almost simultaneously. The ventilation fan at number 8 was blown apart. Wreckage scattered across the hillside. Black smoke poured from both mine mouths. Women and children from the company housing ran toward the mines. They arrived to find twisted rail cars, shattered timber, the smell of sulfur and burnt coal hanging in the cold December air. The mine entrances, the only ways in and the only ways out, were choked with debris. Underground, the men and boys who hadn't been killed outright faced something else entirely. Mu Non Gu in 1907 had no telephone lines running to the mine. There was no emergency alert system, no sirens. Word traveled the way it always had in a company town, by foot, by voice, by the sound of an explosion large enough to rattle glass a half-mile away. Two mines, two explosions, hundreds of yards apart. Everyone running toward those mine mouths that morning was asking the same question. How do you blow up a mine that's already blown up? The answer was the tunnel. The ventilation connection between mine number 6 and mine number 8 was an efficiency measure. One fan system serving both shafts, cutting costs. What it also did, in the event of an explosion, was create a path. When number 6 went up at 10:28, the force of the blast traveled through the ventilation tunnel into mine number 8. The pressure wave hit gas and coal dust in the second mine and set it off. One explosion became two. Two crews, hundreds of yards apart, died within seconds of each other. The tunnel had also destroyed both mines' ability to move air. The number 8 fan was demolished. The number 6 fan was damaged. Underground, the atmosphere was changing fast, and not toward anything that could keep a man alive. 25 minutes after the first explosion, the first volunteer rescuers entered the mine. They didn't have breathing apparatus. In 1907, mine rescue equipment was nearly non-existent in American coalfields. The volunteers wrapped wet cloths around their faces, useless against the gases filling the tunnels, but they tried anyway. They moved in as far as they could. Then the air turned them back. What was filling the mine was what miners called black damp, a mix of carbon dioxide and nitrogen that contained almost no oxygen. And in pockets along the tunnels, white damp, which is carbon monoxide. Odorless, invisible, and lethal in concentrations too small to feel until you were already falling. The rescuers could stay underground for 15 minutes at a time before the gas overwhelmed them. They'd stumble out gasping, eyes streaming, and wait in the cold air until they could go back. Then they'd go back. The recovery operation ran in 15-minute rotations for days. By the following morning, reporters from newspapers across the country had arrived in Mu Non Gu. They found a town that had stopped. The company houses were quiet. On the hillside above the mine entrances, people stood and waited. There was nothing else to do. 362 dead. That was the number Fairmont Coal eventually published, compiled from payroll records of the men who'd gone underground that morning. The company was confident in its count. It had no reason to be. What caused the first explosion? Investigators from Fairmont Coal, the state of West Virginia, and the federal government all tried to answer that question. None of them ever agreed. The company's investigators pointed to electrical equipment. Sparks from electrical machinery could ignite methane or suspended coal dust, both present underground. This theory was convenient in one respect. It framed the explosion as unavoidable, a product of equipment doing what equipment does. Federal Geological Survey investigators pointed somewhere else. The open flame oil lamps that miners carried for light. A single open flame near a pocket of accumulated methane gas could trigger exactly this kind of explosion. Miners had worked with these lamps for decades without incident, but that didn't mean the risk wasn't there. Mining engineers raised a third possibility, a coal dust explosion. When fine coal particles become suspended in mine air, they're highly flammable. A single ignition source can set off a chain reaction that moves through tunnels faster than anyone can run. The scale of the destruction at Mu Non Gu was consistent with this kind of event. The official investigation concluded that no single cause could be definitively proven. Historians who've reviewed the evidence have argued the most likely scenario was a combination. Some ignition source, a spark, an open flame, in an area where methane or coal dust had accumulated. The connected ventilation system then did the rest. After more than 118 years, no one has closed that question. By December 20th, recovery teams had pulled the last accessible bodies from both mines. The final official count from Fairmont Coal's records, 362 dead. It was the worst mining disaster in American history. It still is. But the number was always incomplete, and the people who compiled it knew it. Registered workers often brought their sons to work. Boys as young as 10 would come into the mine to help with whatever needed doing. Work that didn't require a formal entry in any record and didn't get one. Other relatives also worked off the books. The company's payroll was not a count of everyone underground on December 6th. It was a count of the people the company had chosen to track. 362 was a floor, not a ceiling. When relief workers arrived, including Margaret Byington, dispatched by the Red Cross to coordinate aid for surviving families, the numbers they encountered told a story the official count didn't. 216 women had been widowed. 475 children had been orphaned. 31 more would be born after their fathers' deaths. Historian Joseph Tropea, writing in 2013, argued the actual death toll was substantially higher than the official figure. The true number, he concluded, will never be known. The company records didn't account for everyone who died. They weren't designed to. 171 of the confirmed dead were Italian immigrants, men from southern Italy and Calabria who had crossed an ocean for work in a West Virginia coal mine. Russians, Greeks, and Austro-Hungarian immigrants were also among the dead. Many had arrived in America within the past year. 5 survivors are documented. 4 Italian men escaped from mine number 6. One Polish miner was pulled alive from mine number 8. Those 5 were the only ones who came back out. The Fairmont Coal Company knew, once the investigations concluded, exactly what the ventilation tunnel had done. They knew one explosion had become 2 because the mines were connected. They had a choice about what to do with that knowledge. When recovery teams finally reached the deepest sections of the mine, they found something that has stayed in the historical record ever since. Some of the men had survived the initial explosion. The blast hadn't killed them, the gas did. And in the time they spent underground, waiting in the dark for rescuers who couldn't reach them fast enough, some of them had tried to protect themselves. They'd pressed their jackets or rags against their faces. The cloth might have filtered some coal dust. It couldn't do anything against an atmosphere with almost no oxygen. It couldn't block the carbon monoxide moving silently through the dark. But these men didn't know that. They held fabric to their faces and waited for rescue they believed was coming, and they believed the cloth was helping. Bodies were found in clusters, men who had stayed together as the air gave out. They weren't all killed instantly. Some were conscious long enough to find each other, to make decisions, to wait. And the Fairmont Coal Company, after all of this, didn't disconnect the ventilation tunnel between the 2 mines. 216 widows, 475 orphaned children, 31 more born into the world after their fathers were already gone, and a death toll that will never be fully known, because the company didn't count everyone who died. The boys who went underground with their fathers had no place in company records while they were alive. They had no place when they died. Mu Non Gu did force a reckoning. Public outrage over this disaster and others like it pushed Congress to act. In 1910, 3 years after the explosion, the United States Bureau of Mines was created, a federal agency whose existence traces directly to what happened in that valley. But the Bureau of Mines was built for the workers who'd been counted. The children are still uncounted. That's not a clerical error from another era. It's a choice, made before the explosion and made again after it. The survivors, the widows of Mu Non Gu, the children of the dead, carried that absence for the rest of their lives. 31 of those children never met their fathers at all. If this one kept you up tonight, good. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Subscribe so the next one finds you too. That was the Unlit Room. See you in the dark.